welcome to TMZ Live. Harvey Levin here.
Charles here.
So this is crazy, but Tony Buzbee, who has filed a gazillion lawsuits against Diddy, not related to the criminal case, but filed all sorts of lawsuits. There have been a lot of issues surrounding him with, in particular, one woman who made a claim both against Jay-Z and Diddy.
Exactly.
Who then dropped the claim, and Jay-Z is now suing that woman and Tony Buzbee for defamation. Well, Tony Buzbee says, you have no right to sue me. He has gone to court saying, Judge, dismiss this lawsuit against me because we had a deal, comma, bro, exclamation point.
Just to be clear, the bro is not a quote from the lawsuit, but it is the tone of what Tony Buzbee is saying in these documents. He's saying that, when they agreed to drop, well, I shouldn't even use the word agreement. Well, that is the issue here, is that Tony Buzbee is saying he and Jay-Z and Jay-Z's lawyer, Alex Spiro, had an agreement. And that agreement was that Tony Buzbee and the Jane Doe accuser were going to go into court and dismiss that lawsuit. And in exchange, that's the way he makes it seem in these documents, in exchange, Jay-Z would have his investigators back off the Jane Doe accuser. In these documents, they say that days after the lawsuit was dropped, investigators showed up at this woman's house.
Okay, so stop for a second. So explain this to me. I just heard what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Where in this agreement did it say that Jay-Z's not going to sue Tony Buzbee for defamation?
Yeah, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. And by the way, they're saying there was an agreement. To be fair, Jay-Z's side is saying there was never an agreement.
But let's assume for a second there actually was. Let's say there was, even though Jay-Z's team is saying BS. Let's say there was. Where does Tony Buzbee have a right to dismiss the defamation lawsuit because private investigators continued on the hunt for what they say is the truth involving the woman?
Right.
He may have a countersuit, but if there were an agreement.
Grounds for dismissal.
It's not a grounds for dismissal.
Now, we should say there are a couple of other things he put in there for the grounds of dismissal, which he says they sued in the wrong court.
Okay, well, that's a whole other thing. If they sued in the wrong court, they just refiled in the right court.
Well, and this is not a straight-up breach of contract kind of, you have to dismiss because that's what our contract said, but he is pointing out that there was this agreement. Now,
what agreement?
Lawyer,
what agreement?
I will explain. Jay-Z's lawyer describes this very differently. He says, look, I got a call from Tony Buzbee's lawyer who said he wanted to negotiate a dismissal, and I told him in no uncertain terms that Jay-Z would not negotiate any sort of settlement about this. However, that lawyer said, okay, we'll voluntarily dismiss the suit, and then your sanctions motion against us for all this bad behavior should kind of go away as well. He thinks that's what the agreement was, that you would walk away from trying to get sanctions against us, whereas Jay-Z's lawyer says, look, our sanctions motion...
Hey, Derek, is that in his head? Is that in his head? Or, my understanding is usually if you really had an agreement, you put it in writing and you sign it.
And when they filed the dismissal,
here's the paperwork, Your Honor. Here's the paperwork.
It is certainly not a negotiated settlement like that. There is no contractual deal that we can look at this paperwork. There's a series of phone calls and maybe emails, it sounds like.
What fakakta situation is it where a lawyer says, you're not going to sue me, but we're not going to really put it in writing? Huh?
This is
not the way lawyers do deals. You're right about that. To rely on a couple of phone calls and handshakes, that's not the way lawyers do things. We write it down so that we can look to it and say you breached it down the road. So you're right, this is very loose and informal. If you really wanted to rely on that, probably should have gotten it in writing.
Well, and he's not even saying you agreed not to sue us. He never, if he's going to make the argument that there's an agreement, the agreement has to be you agreed not to sue us for filing the lawsuit in the first place.
You're right, although the spirit of the deal, according to that guy, was
you
drop it and you leave us alone.
Spirit. That law doesn't work that way with spirit. You know that, Derek.
Is it also, can I just ask you guys, as attorneys, I'll ask you, is it weird for an attorney like Tony Buzbee to try to broker something with Jay-Z where Tony Buzbee's client is going to drop her lawsuit and Tony Buzbee is going to get some benefit from it?
Not weird. I mean,
this
happens all the time.
But
where there's
why would Tony Buzbee get some why should he benefit from
because the argument is malicious prosecution. And that's what Jay-Z said from the jump in this case.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, lawyers do this a lot, where lawyers will say, look, let's have a mutual dismissal and we agree not to go after the other party in the future. They've done, I mean, that's not uncommon. It's just, that's not this case.
my point is that it's almost like Tony Buzbee, according to Jay-Z's side, was using his client in order to get some benefit for himself, which is, don't go after me in court and my client will drop her suit.
Well, no. It could be, look, I mean, here's the way it could have worked. That Tony Buzbee could have said to Jay-Z's lawyer, look, we're going to have we will dismiss with prejudice, but you agree not to file a malicious prosecution lawsuit because that could be against the lawyer and the client. So agreed not to file against either of us, and we'll go about our merry way.
But that didn't happen.
That didn't happen.
And Jay-Z's side said there was no deal whatsoever. Just to be
Right.
clear, Jay-Z says he did not settle this at all. He did not pay 1 cent to that Jane Doe accuser.
Never made an
Tony
agreement
Buzbee,
with him.
And never made an agreement.
And even if there was this agreement, it doesn't make sense. It's not going to get dismissed.
Hi, my name is Kyra, and I'm from Columbus. I think that Tony Buzbee is probably doing what my mother used to say, writing a check you can't cash. This is a game you don't want to play with somebody who has endless amounts of resources, and when you're coming with these type of very damaging claims, you have to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and he should know that as a lawyer. So good luck, Tony, but it sounds like you might be getting sued, brother.
Yeah.
See ya.
Well, he's getting sued.
He's already getting sued. He's not getting out of it.
He's not getting out of it for this. Okay, I love this next story.